It started when I was 8, around that time, and we were living in Waco. And that's when I started to get the sores in my mouth and started to not sleep or not really eating. Most nights just stay up kind of by like TV light and get maybe like an hour or 2 of sleep. It almost made it worse in some senses because when you're tired, you're not able to think rationally. I spiraled into this web of fear and I was really tangled up in it. And it eventually started to manifest physically. I was throwing up a lot. My stomach was kind of mirroring everything that was going on up in my head. And by the time I reached middle school, it was happening not just at home, but in school. So I started to get really embarrassed because I was like, no one else is freaking out. No one else is throwing up every time something bad happens. One year I went to a youth camp and it was really bad that year. That was my first camp I remember without my best friend. And of course, that feeling of safety was gone. And the whole week, I was in the nurse's office throwing up. My leader came in. She sat with me almost every night and prayed with me. And she shared some of her struggles and she put a name to it. She called it anxiety. And to hear someone say that is something that they struggled with too, and that I wasn't the only one on the entire planet that was struggling with that, began this process of freedom. That was still a long road to go ahead, but that started it. So when I got back from camp that year, I was like, Mom, I think I have anxiety. And she was like, okay. During that time, it did get worse before it got better. By that time, I was in high school seeing a counselor, so it was embarrassing to have to leave school to go to a counselor, and people didn't really know why I was leaving. I didn't really want to tell them, and all the anxiety was still happening. I was still having panic attacks in the bathroom at school. I was still not sleeping. I either wanted to start cutting myself or I wanted to kill myself, and I didn't know which one. I was like, one of these is probably going to happen because I don't really know how to deal with all of this, and I had heard like self-harm, people felt like a release of pain, and I was like, well, that would probably help me because I don't know how else to get this out. By the grace of God, I voiced that to my parents, and they took me to a freedom class at Beltway and encouraged me to talk to my life group leader and just get it all out on the table. My counselor mentioned medication. And I was like, I do not want to be on medication. Only crazy people get on medicine for their brains, and I don't want to be in that category. And she just really calmed my fears. My head was finally clear for like the first time since I was 8. And I was still having a few panic attacks here and there, but I felt like a new person. I was able to think rational thoughts and clearly and understand that what I was feeling, while it was very real, it was not truth. I eventually got to a point where I was on a trip in Ireland and I had a pretty bad panic attack. And Sherry Saltzgaber actually came into my room. She sat me down and she was like, okay, I want you to look back to when like your worst anxieties started, and like I wanted you to go back to where you first started feeling this way. And I was like, I don't understand how this is gonna help, but okay. And she took me back there and she said, I want you to ask Jesus where he was. And I lost it. I guess in all my anxieties, I always felt like I was alone because my parents didn't understand, my friends didn't understand, and he was there. Like I saw him there, sitting next to me late at night while the TV's on, and I'm freaking out. He was there. And that moment changed my life forever because it switched the innate, like all my life I believed that I wasn't safe, I wasn't cared for, I wasn't protected, and that he'd kind of just left me and thrown me to the wolves and I was fending for myself. But he was there all along, and that realization brought me more healing and freedom than medicine ever did, than counseling ever did. I have hope and I have a way out, and I don't have to sit in that anxiety, and I don't have to claim it as my identity anymore, because even if I'm not healed till I see Jesus, I know that he's good and he's for me and he's with me, and that was what I needed to know all along.